And for me, it was like, okay, whatever else I'm doing, I need to find a way to like harness what I'm seeing here to fix this particular problem. This is what is most important to me. I don't know who I'd be or where I'd be without the ocean, right? It was sort of that key moment of like, this means so much to me. And I'm seeing sort of the worst of humanity and the best of humanity coming together at the same point here. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could find a way to actually harness that?
Hey, thanks for checking out the show. That's Michael Stewart, co-founder of Sustainable Surf, whose SeaTrees, Ecoboard Project, and Ocean Positive programs are not only highlighting the need to reverse climate change, but also serve, for all of us, as on-ramps to living a more sustainable lifestyle. Sustainable Surf was formed in 2011 when Michael Stewart and his co-founding partner Kevin Whilden saw an opportunity to use the global appeal of surf culture to convince people that a more sustainable future is within reach. But as you know, founding a nonprofit, that's a leap of faith. And before that, they both had good day jobs that they had to convince themselves to leave in order to pursue this mission. In fact, Michael specialized in launching consumer and brand-focused carbon offset programs for several companies, as well as sustainable product certification programs before embarking on this entrepreneurial endeavor. And as Michael tells it, he owes his entrepreneurial spirit and success to a college degree in art and graphic design, a reasoning that I found quite compelling, actually. Michael's passion for the ocean and the lessons he's learned from surfing come through loud and clear, and I think you'll really appreciate them. But as a lifelong surfer, Michael points out that he was part of the community that was seeing the early effects of climate change in the ocean, and that was pivotal to convincing him to act. The ocean is the hero at the center of Sustainable Surf's story, and of course, as Michael breaks down in this interview, it plays a crucial role in helping us reverse climate change. For more than 10 years now, Michael has led the research and development for Sustainable Surf's award-winning programs, but it really feels like they're just getting started. I like to call stories like this a 10-year overnight success. You might just be hearing about them now, but for years, they've been intentionally crafting this message and strategically prepping their supporters to tackle the climate crisis in the most meaningful way possible. Sustainable Surf has planted and restored more than 3 million sea trees, and he'll talk all about it in our talk, helped define the sustainable surfboard movement, and has now partnered with brands and companies that you've likely heard of well beyond just the surf industry. If you've got an entrepreneurial spirit or are building or working with a nonprofit, or maybe you're looking for ways to have an impact, you'll want to hear Michael's story and all the great advice he's got. I've worked with these guys for more than 10 years now, so it was really fun for me to learn more about the backstory to their journey, and I really hope that you enjoy the conversation as well. And with that said, here's my chat with Michael Stewart of Sustainable Surf. Welcome to Good Things Happening, the show that explores the sustainability progress that's being made just under the surface at your favorite brand or company. I'm your host, Derek Sabori, and these are the people making it happen. Alrighty. Michael Stewart, how are you today, man? Good to see you.
Corey, we are back again. So stoked to be here. Thanks for inviting me on. I think this is really cool, this podcast that you're doing. And I'm excited to get into it.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking time because you guys are so busy. You and I have known each other for a long time. And I got to work with you guys in the earliest days, I think, of Sustainable Surf. So what I want to do,
right? Like we've.
Actually over a decade. That's crazy. So there's been so much that has evolved from the work that you and Kevin are doing over there at Sustainable Surf, SeaTrees, et cetera. We're going to unpack all of that and kind of walk through the journey. But Real quick, give us some insight. You are dialing in from the Bay Area.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm based out of here in beautiful Marin County. Was based in San Francisco when Kevin and I actually first started Sustainable Surf. And I'm stoked to say that we now have offices, and these are small offices, right? Or part of a co-working space or whatever else. But so we have our small office here in Sausalito, actually, one in Manhattan Beach, which is where the main office is. And then we have a whole crew of new staff down in San Diego. So we've got a cool office that's right around Encinitas. So
very nice.
We're taking over California, man.
Yeah, you are. And all the nice spots too, it sounds like. So tell us a little bit about, before we dive in, I know all about you guys, but give us the kind of the high level pitch of sustainable surf, what you guys do, why you're there, why you exist, and then we'll dive into your role and all the different programs. But give us the elevator pitch for who Sustainable Surf is.
Yeah, so Sustainable Surf is a California-based nonprofit org in the environmental space. And we have a really clear mission, from the very beginning, which was we were focused around the impacts around climate change. Because first and foremost, as surfers, we could see where those impacts were first showing up before anyone else could. And where was that, Derek? That was in the ocean, right? That's ocean acidification rising. That's ocean warming, right? It's, rapid sea level rise. It was the change that you could physically see to coral reefs and kelp forests and mangrove forests, places where we would go, to go surfing at home or when we're traveling. You could actually see these things abroad. We'd go to Indo and you would see the bleached coral reefs. You'd go to Australia, you'd go to the Caribbean, right? So all of those impacts from the very beginnings of climate change, which everyone is now, critically aware of and feeling, from the heat waves, hottest, year ever recorded in, human history.
125,000 years I saw yesterday.
It is absolutely amazing. Australia is boiling. The Mediterranean, where we have projects, is, absolutely crazy. The sea surface, temperatures and things like that, right? So myself and Kevin were both working in businesses that were essentially in the climate change space. We were both working with projects that worked around carbon dioxide, the removal of carbon dioxide by natural systems, right? And this was all happening in the early 2000s. And what was interesting to us is that, this narrative around climate change was like, is it real? Can you quite feel it? This summer was a little hotter, but not much, or whatever else. And we were sitting there going, as surfers, we could actually see this happening basically in real time, right? It was really interesting to understand that those impacts showed up in the ocean first. And that's what actually brought us to trying to tackle that problem. And the way that we were trying to do it, right, was through the lens of what was most interesting and most passionate to us, which was surfing and the ocean and ocean culture, and everything that kind of goes along with that, right? And we sort of recognize and realize this, like, one simple truth, right, is that surfing and surf culture is sexy, right? It gets eyeballs. And every single company in the world, for the last 125 years has been using that, right? And I'm not talking surf brands. I'm talking, beer and automotive and, software, gasoline, cigarettes back in the day, right? Everyone was like, oh, you know what? People pay attention to this. This is really cool. Let's use that to sell the world something that we want. And we said, what if we could actually harness that power, right? And the power of the ocean to actually fix these problems, to sell people what they really need, which is a livable planet.
So that's a big goal. That's a big BHAG right there.
Yep.
But so that's kind of the high level. We're going to dive in because it's evolved. I know what you guys have built has evolved so much, but tell me about your day-to-day role there as well. You're one of the co-founders, but what is your role there at Sustainable Surf with all the programs? And I just want to kind of dive in and get a sense of what you do. What are the skills that it took to get there? Because I think people are really interested too in just the idea of starting a nonprofit, getting into this space. But tell us a little bit about your day-to-day role there.
Yeah, it's definitely changing, right? Because myself and Kevin, with a couple other core sort of staff partners like Brett Giddings, right, and others, we were, a 2, 3, 3.5 person team for, many years. Which means that,
and real quick, I hate to do this, but I want to interrupt you because I just saw this on the website. Speaking of Brett Giddings, shout out to Brett, because I know he was there so early with you guys helping. And we're going to get into your story. I want to know how you met Kevin as well, your co-founding partner as well. So we're going to dive into that. But with Brett, I know that he's got an emeritus staff title which is great because it sounds like he's kind of moved on to different things, but he was a foundational partner. I love that you guys kind of gave him that credit of emeritus staff. So he's a staffer for life, right?
Absolutely. Well, and all the people that have been with us, if they've gone on to something else, we definitely still consider them part of the family and part of the way that we actually got here, right? It's definitely been a team effort. But yeah, back to your point, it's like in the beginning, sustainable surf was this idea that Kevin and I had, right? And it was a really hard decision to actually make, to leave, well-paying jobs.
Yeah, I bet. I know the feeling.
Yeah, right. And to say, okay, this thing that needs to be done is so key and so critically important, right? That I'm going to take a leap of faith. And that's what we did, right? And sort of initially it was like, okay, well, if no one else is going to focus on the issue of climate change in this cool, interesting, engaging, solutions-oriented way that people actually be stoked about, like if we're waiting around for someone else to do it, it's not going to happen. It's sort of that key mantra of, if not us, then who? If not now, then when, right? So we essentially took a leap. We borrowed 10 grand from Kevin's dad and started hitting sort of the pavement and the interesting people that we knew within surf culture and the surf brands and things like that, right? And Kevin and I were both actually volunteering as Surfrider Foundation members, kind of at the time. And it just
where you guys met? Is that where you guys met? Is that where you first met?
Yeah. So in San Francisco at a Surfrider meeting, like a lot of good things happening in that space, right? And love Surfrider, still a member. So it was this idea of let's try this and let's see if we can actually, make a dent and, make some impact. So at that point it was 2011 at, that point. And we've been talking about this for, probably 2 or 3 years kind of before this, right? And it just so happened that the Rip Curl Pro Search was coming to San Francisco for that fall, and they had come actually that spring to sort of come to the community and say, "Hey, we want to come and bring this here, and it's a great event, yada yada." And I basically sort of held up my hand at that meeting and was like, "Hey, what's your sustainability plan? Because if you come to San Francisco and you block off a street, then you have to have a plan submitted to the city, right?"
So real quick, Rip Curl for their surf contest was coming to the Surfrider Foundation meeting for you guys, or just was this a community event that you were somehow?
It was just a community event, yeah.
Community, right? Okay.
Yeah, and sort of people in the surf community were invited to come and listen to Rip Curl come and say, here's basically, we want to come to your beach town, and it's a great way of actually practicing, right? It's like
stakeholder engagement.
Like, hey, we're coming to your town. We want to show up essentially in the right way, right?
Yeah, so good for them.
Kind of great bones there. Long story short, they, like every other surf company, basically didn't have any sustainability plans, right? And they're kind of like, well, we don't actually have that. And I sort of stuck up my hand and said, I tell you what, I'll work with you and we'll build it out and we'll see what happens, right? So that was that, and the 10 grand that we borrowed from Kevin's dad, so that we could leave our sort of full-time jobs, and basically for about maybe 3 or 4 months, really focus on putting some bones on this. We laid out the foundation of our first 2 programs, right? Which was the Deep Blue Surfing events, which is how we then connected with you when you were at Volcom, and the Waste to Waves program, right? Which is upcycling really hard to deal with materials like styrofoam packaging that people would get when they order something else, and we would upcycle that into new surfboard blanks with our partners at Marco Foam, right? So it was those 2 things, and then coupling it with really trying to make that Rip Curl Pro Search in 2011 in San Francisco, the greenest surf contest, ever thrown, right? And we threw everything at it. I mean, we got biodiesel used in all the generators. We had bicycle and a skateboard, valet. We banned, single-use plastics. We reused everything, almost everything. So all the food, we actually, 98% of all the food waste actually went into compost. The whole village part was actually broken down, and most of that material was given to Habitat for Humanity. We had like a 99 recycling or a 99% recycling rate, and it kind of blew everyone's mind. It was like, oh, if you actually put some intention into this and sort of thought about things in a systematically different way and made better choices and brought people together around those choices, then you could make real progress, right?
So, quick question, hitting the pause button on that, because this is big actually for me in my mind. 'Cause I'm like, God, that's right. You were making such a push on greening surf events. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see how your organization has sort of pivoted a bit. And I'm sure we could have a whole kind of episode on just maybe the frustration that was there and what it took and the buy-in. But that really feels like that was a catalyst event for you guys. So had you already made the decision prior to Rip Curl coming to say, we're quitting our day jobs, we're all in on this, and then it was fortuitous that came? Or was that sort of the event that said, hey, we're in the right space, let's go do this?
Derek. Hey, listen, so it was all happening right in that same moment, right?
Wow.
And I remember having that meeting in April, and then May I went on a surf trip down to Mexico, and really was in that space and wrapping my head sort of around that. I asked my wife,
as we do, yes,
and I was like, hey, what do you think? And she was like, take a chance, go for it. If it doesn't work for some reason, then,
go back and get a job.
Then at least you tried, right?
Yeah, so, exactly.
For entrepreneurs sort of in general, unless you're incredibly well-funded and, well-backed, oftentimes you're trying to keep an eye open for what could be an opportunity for me to actually take this idea to a bigger stage than my buddies as we're sitting around a campfire on a surf trip and being like, hey, you know what? Someone should really do this, right? Hey, and that's, for me, those are, key things, right? I think it was Thomas Edison, right? That said something, there's like hard work and like inspiration, perspiration, and whatever else, right? But he really had this thought around the opportunity and being aware for when those happen, right? Because when they do happen, you do need at that point to make a jump and be ready to actually make that jump and actually see what happens, right? So you're correct in that we were already going this way, but having that opportunity was sort of the trigger for saying, let's do this. And one of the cool things about not having a net is that you're incredibly motivated to really make things happen. It's not a like, oh, cool, we'll see how this happens and we'll go around. It's like, okay, we really need this to happen. And for me, that is one of the key things, right? Is like, cool, no net. That means I really have to make this thing work. And you basically build upon one success from the other. And that's really what we've been doing as an organization. Of course, there's things where you go backward or, it wasn't a good bet or whatever else, but it's really about finding some of those early stepping stones and people and mentors to actually help you along in that journey so that you can believe in yourself enough to, take a risk and go do it.
Yeah. So, and that's great. And I love that. The fact that, you took an entrepreneurial leap, both of you did. It's a big step. It's worked out. You guys are 10 years plus into it. Yep. I actually want to kind of move off of sustainable surf for just a second, because as you laid out at this point in the journey so far, where you're doing deep blue surf events, you've got the Waste to Waves program. So we're going to then take it from there and move on to the rest of the programs you've done. But for you personally, I'm actually really interested as well in the fact that you did your undergrad in graphic arts, right? You were a graphic arts major. And then
Graphic
you
art
got into,
design. Yeah.
yeah, and then you got into climate work. Tell me about that transition. How did that come about? Did you know, was that intentional, or was that also sort of serendipitous? Like, oh, well, here's an opportunity. Or was there a flashpoint moment for you? How'd you go from A to B? And then I want to know,
Yeah.
because that also probably sets the path for how you and Kevin split up your roles. You know, you
Yeah.
probably,
Right.
I think he's on the science. You guys both have science minds. I know that, but
Yeah.
I think he really tackles the science analytics part. You seem to be on the operations creative side, I guess, programming side.
Yep.
That's my
Communication
viewpoint.
partnership, right? Yeah.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah. I'm an art school kid. More specifically, I'm a art and design graduate, right?
Yeah,
And looking back now, I think that exposure, that experience was perhaps one of the best prerequisites for becoming an entrepreneur. And it may seem a little bit unlikely, but when you're going through art and design, you're harnessing creativity in a structured way. You're typically starting from an idea, and you need to bring it into fruition through tools and processes and other partnerships and working through other people. That is literally, the heart and soul of an entrepreneur. It's like, I have this idea. How do I get, this done? Is it a product? Is it a service? You're going to need collaborators and vendors and partnerships and all these things to help bring that, to basically bring that along, right? So, and the other key thing here, really, I think that art and design and creativity, it teaches you critical thinking. It teaches you problem solving, right? There is a deep level of self-sufficiency that also comes along with creating art, creating design. You have to be this sort of multifaceted person, right? So I took my art and design degree, and I basically ended up on the West Coast, where I was born in Seattle, at the birth of the World Wide Web, right? And it was a really fascinating, interesting place. Like, it was where you wanted to basically be in that particular moment, right? That was like, it was like early '90s, right? And
how lucky are we, by the way, to live in that time? Like, as the web comes to life, being old enough to know what life was like before that, but now being old enough also to go, there's a real opportunity here. How do I jump in here?
Exactly right. So, and even at that point, I was like, oh, this is a new way that people are actually, communicating and connecting with each other, right? So it's about ideas. It's about creativity. So I was up in Seattle working for all different types of entrepreneurial businesses, and I was really focused on the communication, art, and design side of things. Yeah, it was like internet magazines that were like half online and half on a disc, and it was with dial up, and like you had all these sort of technical challenges that people have no idea about these days, because the technology and the speed and the delivery and whatever else, basically it would have blown your mind back in the day to see where we are now, even having this little interview thing, right?
Yeah, our kids will never know the pain.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a great place to be, to sort of hone those skills learned in art and design school, but in the real world, and doing things for big brands and partnerships and different organizations, right? So the reason that I'm bringing this up is that if I hadn't had, that foundation of, critical thinking, problem solving, self-sufficiency, and this real, this, sort of deep layer of understanding that collaboration and working across people and organizations, even around the globe, even at that particular time as well, that really landed me and Kevin in this position, back in the early 2000s, So we didn't start from just nowhere, right? Or just as surfers that, love the environment. We're trying to give back in ways, that we could through our local Surfrider chapters and other, sort of green kind of business practices. Yeah. And things like that. And so we were ready in that moment. It was almost like preparation. And there were lots of entrepreneurial groups and businesses that I was involved in, and so was Kevin. And I think in that moment, we were just saying, we see this need on the horizon. It's affecting the ocean environment. Its name is climate change or global warming or whatever it was called at that particular point. Right now, we call it frankly, there's no other word than it's a climate crisis, right? This is a problem we literally have to fix.
Yeah.
And what I'm most stoked about is that at the end of the day, yes, we have different programs. We have different people. We've tried different ways to get to the same goal. But at its heart, and Kevin and I still look back on this and go like, wow, we actually had a really good, interesting vision way back in the day, which was, okay, if climate change is basically happening because of the amount of CO2 that's getting put up into the atmosphere, it's got a certain parts per million number, right? And with Kevin's background as a scientist and knowing, thousands and millions of years where the carbon goes up and the earth warms up and all these changes happen. The carbon goes down, it gets colder, right? Like, it's not something that we actually haven't seen. So he understood that mechanism really, really well. And so we sort of had this moment of like, great, well then it's reversible, right? Like, it can go both ways based on the amount of carbon. Okay. So that carbon that's been put up there now has to be recaptured or sequestered, right? And what are the best ways of actually doing that? Turns out it's natural ecosystems, right? And the ecosystems that are most endangered in this particular moment where these impacts are showing up first are the ocean, are the coastal ecosystems that we all essentially live and play around, right? So that's kelp forests and mangrove forests and coral reefs, seagrass, coastal watershed, oyster reefs, right? It's those places that are super tangible and accessible and that are doing the actual hard work of sequestering carbon and providing habitat and increasing biodiversity and providing storm protection and erosion and jobs for local communities. All these incredible benefits. We were thinking, okay, well, that would be our way to reverse climate change, to pull those numbers back down and have all these incredible side benefits that we don't think of just co-benefits or side benefits now. There's sort of a more holistic structure that's in line with what the UN calls the Sustainable Development Goals, right? And what we just call, like I said before, a livable planet.
Yeah,
right?
it's a roadmap to a livable planet.
It's a roadmap, yeah,
for sure. And I think so. What I'm hearing, I think I'm feeling you kind of edge towards the launch of the SeaTrees program.
Yep.
I do want to know though. I want to rewind just a second though and find out, was there, going from that arts degree, which I love that analogy that you gave too, from being an artist to an entrepreneur, because I was a studio arts major as well. That was what I studied, and we find ourselves in this position. But I love that comparison that you made. That's great.
Yeah.
Secondly, though, was there a flashpoint moment though that really brought you into the climate space? Was there one thing where you're like, I'm not going to do art in Seattle anymore, or I'm not doing the internet thing. This is what I'm chasing after. What was your catalyst moment?
Yeah. So, there's a couple catalyst moments here, right? Like most people say like, oh, there's just one thing that happened. And in reality, it's typically a number of different things, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, it was seeing those changes already taking place, maybe specifically, coral reefs, right? From going on, surf trips in, tropical waters, right? And then actually, when the movie The Inconvenient Truth came out in 2006, 2007, right? That was one of the first times that I think anyone had seen in a presentable, like media digestible way that there was a problem. So it wasn't just a, presentation, which I had seen and which I had heard and whatever else, but it was like, oh, okay, if you actually tell a compelling story and give people the knowledge of what's going on, then you can actually start to make a real difference on this thing. Because until there was sort of that moment that people could digest it in a movie, and it was like, oh, this is how people talk. This is the communication. This is media. This is comms, right?
This is powerful.
This is branding. This is marketing.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay. So I see a path forward, and maybe if I can crystallize it down to maybe sort of one key moment. Again, this was back in 2007. We actually had a big oil tanker called the Costco Busan come through the bay, and basically it hit the bay bridge. All the oil spilled, right? And it just went out straight to the beaches at Ocean Beach and up on the Marin side. And I remember, like, the surf culture mobilized in a huge way around this thing. It wasn't just surf culture. It was like everyone in San Francisco and everyone, in the inner and the outer Sunset and whatever, like, came together around this issue to basically fix it, right? And the reason they did was that it was the ocean that was actually being impacted, right? And, I was sitting there in like knee-deep water in the fall, Ocean Beach. It was like overhead, perfect, glassy. It was amazing surf. And I was standing there with a hair mat, trying to sop up oil out of the waves as they were rolling to me, and just sort of, looking around and seeing all the people there and whatever, and going like, okay, this is futile. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I was like, this is the worst way you could possibly, this is the worst moment that you could pick to try to step in and say, let's solve this problem, right?
Yeah, at that point, it's too late. Too little, right. Too late, basically.
And it's basically, you're doing some form of like damage control, right? And in that same moment, though, it's like, wow, look at how people have come together around this. And for me, it was like, okay, whatever else I'm doing, I need to find a way to like harness what I'm seeing here to fix this particular problem. This is what is most important to me. I don't know who I'd be or where I'd be without the ocean, right? It was sort of that key moment of like, this means so much to me. And I'm seeing sort of the worst of humanity and the best of humanity coming together at the same point here. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could find a way to actually harness that, right? So, and again, it was like sort of this moment, and you're looking for opportunity along the way, right? So it wasn't until, 3 or 4 years later that having had these ideas, preparing, and then seeing that particular moment when like, oh, one of the biggest surf brands in the world is coming to our hometown. And this is a moment for us to harness, not just, the enthusiasm of surf culture and the local beach culture and whatever else, but we can actually spread this message to the world. We can have it be this case study of like, look how cool this thing is. And this could be replicated basically everywhere, and not just in a surfing contest, but in people's everyday lives, right?
Yeah, that's so great. I mean, the convergence of all of those things. And I love, I'm just uncovering these parallels that we have, because not until kind of researching your background did I realize you were a graphic arts major, as I was, or an art major. Yep. And then secondly, that was my exact flashpoint moment as well, was watching An Inconvenient Truth. We did it at Volcom. It was a lunch and learn. We had put a little eco club together. I remember watching the titles scroll down. I'm like, this is what I will be doing for the rest of my life. This is what I will be working on.
Right. So, you're like, what else could be more important and more critical than this? And I think as surfers, Derek, and like people who are born in and around the ocean, for me, I felt it so much stronger, I think, than people who are like seeing this on land and going, okay, this is a problem that we have to fix. Us as surfers, we're like the canaries in the coal mine. Like we're living and experiencing these ocean impacts in real time. So that was a key moment.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, you keep going back to surfing, and it's such a such an important plays such an important role in your life. Mine as well. It's always been sort of a center anchor point. But I love, kind of reading through the website, you say that, simple surfing is the simple, honest lessons. There are those lessons that you get from it. Explain a little bit about that. How is surfing translating to all the rest of the work you're doing? I guess I'm sure it kind of helps paint the why for what you're doing, right? But tell us about those simple, honest lessons. Where do we start?
Get up early in the morning, catch the waves before everyone else is already on it. While it's still clean, time and tide, wait for no person, right? It's like those sort of values of like hard work, getting up, showing up, paying attention, right? Kevin and I, like, he's a geologist, right? And we were always, especially in the kind of early days, right? We're, looking at all the weather maps and all the surf forecasting things. I remember back in the day when Surfline, you would call or
was it a 976 surf? I think it was.
Right. Exactly. Right. So, surfers already had this mindset of like thinking ahead, planning 2 weeks away, right? Looking at weather patterns, seeing trends, right? And so when I say that surfing really, I think, prepared me or gave me those lessons that then translate, right, to how you end up living your life, the people that you surround yourself with, sort of how you move, through the day. And even, when the surf gets bigger, right, that idea of you need to be prepared, self-sufficiency, you're paddling out at Ocean Beach and it's, double overhead and, you're out at Terraval and then, the dark set comes through. It's you. Like you're like, it's like the be here now, sort of this like Zen moment of like, here you are. And what are you going to do? You can't, there's no ripcord to pull at that point. So it does teach you like, okay, I need to relax, be calm. I'm going to get through this. There's a little bit of faith that's involved in that. Right. And and you come out the other side and you realize that it actually can be done. Right. So that's what I mean by, I think that a surfing life, and the way that makes you roll through the day, I don't know about you, but I'm always still looking at, okay, my week ahead, what meetings do I want planned? Because I've checked the swell forecast and I've looked at the tides, And it's like, great. Well, I'm going to plan and organize around having access to the ocean for my own, mental health, and everything else that it does to basically, keep me grounded in the work that I'm, incredibly lucky and honored to be able to do, which is, at this point in the organization, our, biggest, most important, legacy flagship program is our SeaTrees program. And every time I go out in the ocean, I feel this incredible connection because I'm lucky enough to get to work, and the rest of my team is lucky enough to get to work on, regenerating, regrowing, and protecting those ecosystems in which we play.
Okay, so first we should have a disclaimer that says that no decent waves in Michael's backyard went unridden during the filming of this podcast, right? It's almost like a public service announcement.
It's like 1 to 2 feet right now.
So hence the recording session.
Perfect time to have this.
Yeah, exactly. And then so two, let's move on. Let's talk about SeaTrees because that's a big program that you guys are doing. And it's sort of stuck on my mind that before we do, kind of going back to an inconvenient truth.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you had this moment, because I know a lot of what you guys do now is just educating, informing. That's a big barrier to me to getting people on board is just having an understanding. We've been fortunate enough to have been working on this for 10, 12, 14 years now.
Yep.
But we had to learn, right? We didn't get this information through school. We didn't get it through our professional pathways. I remember leaving that movie just going, I was
now
part
what?
of my, well, not only that, but I was also irritated. I was like, how do I not know this? Why is this so new to me?
Yeah.
By then I had 2 degrees, right? I'd gone back for a master's degree. So I had a master's degree. I had 10, 12 years of experience in the workplace. I'm like, how is it possible that this is new? This is just so brand new, and it's been going on. So that really sparked my fire as well. And so that's why for me, it's about informing people and educating and getting people on board. So let's roll all that in over to your SeaTrees program. You guys have been on a
segue for you, actually, right?
Yeah, take it.
And I'll try to kind of roll through this quickly, right? Because we tried lots of different programs early on and lots of events, right? So we had our Waste to Waves program, which was we're taking wetsuits and turning them into yoga mats with a brand partner. The same thing, we were doing, kiteboard sales into bags. We were doing, styrofoam packaging and to surfboard blanks and whatever else. We had the Deep Blue events, right? It's like the tribe is coming together, for the world tour in these spaces. That's a great place to put all these practices into place and to showcase them essentially to the world, right? One of our other flagship programs, which we also still have now, it's called the Ecoboard Project, right? And it's basically about getting more sustainable materials and processes, used in building surfboards around the world. Because like you said, it's like being a surfer and living that life builds these values and teaches you these like simple truth and honest lessons, right? And it always, felt incredibly off to me and Kevin, right? That the surfboards that we had that we were riding, and was the motivation for us to like help fix things were some of the most toxic petrochemical, combinations that exist, period. Right. Yeah. And so we really thought, okay, if people get more eco-friendly surfboards, it is not going to solve climate change. It doesn't matter if your entire quiver is actually full of it, but it is a really interesting and authentic pathway for any surfer to start to think about this or to understand. Going back to your point of like, how do I not know about any of this, right? That was our moment of like, how do people not know about this? Because it hasn't been told to you in a story or presented to you in some way that you have an on-ramp to, right? And so all of our programs, right? So the Ecoboard Project, Deep Blue Surfing events, Waste to Waves, we did a bunch of things based on sort of the TEDx model called, ShredX, right? It was about bringing people together to make them aware of these issues and do it in a way that was approachable and that they could engage in. And this is key, that there was something that they could do based on it, right? So, if you were interested or concerned about your climate footprint or what was happening in the ocean because of that, then there were things that you could do, particularly in your surfing life. And the best place to start is the surfboard, because that's the one thing that, any surfer in the world can actually agree on is cool and interesting and we love, right? So if we could wrap our hands around, around that symbol and then work on changing that so that manufacturing globally was heading on the path of using more sustainable, lower carbon footprint, less toxic materials, that was a great path forward, right? So, and finally, SeaTrees as a program was actually built directly from the experience and the work that Kevin and I were doing right before we started Sustainable Surf, right? So I was already doing ecosystem restoration projects around the world, helping to develop some of the first carbon offset programs, right? And Kevin was doing the exact same thing, more on the science side of things with the ocean as well, right? So we had that understanding of, these ecosystems are critically important for doing that. But in those early days, it really felt like trying to say, okay, now everyone needs to understand, the carbon footprinting of things, and, blue carbon, which wasn't even a term when we started, and all the science behind it and whatever else. We basically said, let's build everything, all the programs that we have, so that there's a component of reducing your climate impact and reducing your carbon footprint from, doing this thing, or getting a surfboard, or getting a yoga mat, or upcycling your trash so it has another life, or, picking from the Vulcan brand at that particular point, right? When you actually launched the Eco series, I'm spacing on the name.
It was the Vecological series, we called it.
Vecological, right? Yeah, it was like, cool. Like, at the very least, let's use organic cotton, right? So those things were like what we felt like we had to work with first in order to actually build a community and build trust and authenticity with that community before we could really get into the deeper, heavier things around, hey, it's not just climate change or global warming or, something happening here. Kevin and I always felt this is the existential crisis of our lifetime, of all of our lifetimes. If we do not get this thing correct, and if we don't get this thing right, and by right, I mean drawing, it's like putting fewer emissions out there in the first place.
Yeah.
The way that we, power our homes and lives and, travel and the products that we consume and whatever else. And at the same time, soaking up or sequestering or pulling the carbon that we've already put up into the atmosphere and that has now been absorbed. About 25% of all the CO2 that we shoot up in the atmosphere gets absorbed by the ocean, which is why they're becoming more acidic, right?
Yeah.
The same kind of carbonation that happens in a Coke that'll take the shine off of a penny. That's what's happening in the ocean to the little marine animals who make their exoskeletons essentially with that carbon, right? So, and that calcium. So having a way to talk to people first is why we launched SeaTrees in 2019, after we felt like we had spent that first 7 years of really cementing our place within surf culture, with surf brands, with this like building, a authentic community that was really interested in what we were doing.
Fascinating, because I don't think I realized that it was so intentional. It may, if it was, good for you guys, because it's interesting because you guys did come from that science. You had that pedigree from the beginning, but you knew that you had to date the audience first. It was like, it was going to be too much too soon if you just came out and said, as you point, ecosystem services and
solve climate change
regeneration.
Right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, whoa, wait, right? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Really, I was going to say just really smart. And I think it's great because you eased everybody into it. And it was with these low hanging fruits. And what's interesting too, if you look back, for anybody maybe that was a little more tuned in, you're like, yeah, but like you said, those things don't matter. Some of them don't really matter, but they're those personal levers that get people into the game.
Steps along the way, Derek, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You feel a part of it. And then before you know it, it opens your mind to saying, okay, I'm seeing that my yoga mat probably isn't solving it. Just like you said, if your entire quiver, that's not the problem.
Right.
And that I think is important too, because it helps people deal with the guilt. I'm always telling people, it's like, well, the more you know, the more free you are to do less, because you're like, it's not my surfboard quiver. It is, but it's also not, right? It's like, do not beat yourself up for every little thing, because there's a bigger thing here, something bigger at play here.
Yeah.
And this is the SeaTrees program. So I love it. I'm fascinated by it. So great story. Tell us then what goes on with this SeaTrees program. Why do you guys, it's almost become its own, it feels like its own organization. It's becoming, tell us all about it. How does it work? Exactly. How do people get involved? I know you have a branding, like for brands to become certified as well. So dive into SeaTrees.
Yeah. So a lot of nonprofits end up with, okay, here's our name, and whatever we figure out we might want to run as like a program, it's still like the name of Sustainable Surf, and we're going to try to do like all of these things. Again, I come from the creative side, the branding, the marketing, the communications, and I always had this really strong feeling that that every single program that we did was like its own little brand, right? And it all fits under the roof of Sustainable Surf as the nonprofit organization. But it can feel really hard. You can take Surfrider, right? It's like they're involved in so many different things. And I do think that if you're trying to peel off like one separate little thing, it can be hard to do that under, a big umbrella, right? So I definitely took inspiration from one of Surfrider's programs, the Ocean Friendly Gardens or Ocean Friendly Restaurants, right?
And I remember that.
They gave like its own, so basically it didn't have to carry the weight of everything else that the organization was essentially doing. It could focus on a very specific, product or a service or a way for people to actually get involved. So all of our programs, that's why they all had their own branding, right? Was that it wasn't just a general, like, we want to educate you about all of these things. That's the backbone of the nonprofit organization. The program is really how you end up delivering your impact to people. And the best way to do that is with a very specific, targeted brand and message and the visuals and something that people can really wrap their head and their arms around and sort of fall in love with it, right? So when we launched the SeaTrees program, just like every other program, it had its own microsite or website, and it was really focused on doing the most simple thing possible, which is protecting and restoring these coastal ecosystems all around the world. And we never thought of ourselves as like, hey, we'll be a tree planting, org, even though one of our first projects was a mangrove restoration project, right? It was always about, all of these things are incredibly impacted, right? So we've lost 50% of the world's mangroves, 50% of the world's coral reefs, 50% of the world's kelp forests in the last, 40 to 50 years, right? There's a pattern there. And really even selecting the name SeaTrees was this way of saying, okay, well, how do we make something that is easily approachable and sort of knowable, right? But then give it like this novel twist. And people were really used to, especially on the climate side of things, every Earth Day, it's like, hey, we're, you get the company photo with like, we're planting a tree out here, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of harnessed that and said, what if you're planting a tree in the sea? And that's a really novel concept. You don't plant trees in the sea normally. The ocean kills trees. Right. And so I think the genius of like that program and the naming and the branding and everything was to find, again, sort of this kind of unifying theme around all these different ecosystems. And when you like pull back from it and you can actually start to see how, some of the redwood forests around here, which are amazing and beautiful and full of life and habitat and have their own species mix and whatever else, the forests that are under the sea, the kelp forest, whether it's bull kelp or whether it's the giant kelp or others, they start to really look like these forest ecosystems, right? Even the coral reefs, right? And they're even called, the rainforests of the sea and things like this, right?
Yeah.
They all basically serve that same like foundational, like structural sort of element, right? So trees on land are doing the same thing that the kelp forest plants are doing in that forest, the same thing that the coral reef is actually doing, the same thing that an oyster reef is actually doing, right? It's like providing the infrastructure for this ecosystem to even exist, right? And when you understand, okay, so they all actually share that in common, and they share sort of the same understanding that these are holistic ecosystems. There's different stressors and there's different ways that you have to think about restoration and monitoring and measuring, right? Like when we plant a mangrove tree in one of our projects, it stays there. We can go back to that same tree and measure it and understand it and whatever else, right? But if you're working in a kelp forest, by its nature, kelp is more seasonal. It gets ripped out by the storms, right? It's actually the key way that kelp forests sequester carbon is that by growing, up to 2 feet a day, in the case of giant kelp here in California, that may float out to the open ocean 500 kilometers away and sink down and sequester that carbon, right? So it's a lot different than sort of traditional forest, right? But they all do share these common characteristics. And so we thought, if we can make it simple and approachable, right, and understandable, since most people in the world don't get a chance to go free diving and to be in the ocean and be in the water and to see these places in the same way that surfers get the opportunity to do so, we're trying to make it so that it's understandable and relatable, right? So that's on the communication side of things, right? And I think that we solved that. Here's the thing that I'm really most proud of, and it's really across all of our programs, Derek, right? There was always something to do. There was a tangible, okay, I'm telling you about this problem and I'm giving you an action that you can take, or I'm pointing you in these directions. Because there's nothing worse than saying, hey, the sky's falling and there's nothing you can do about it. Wait for the government and hope it works out somehow, right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, okay, yes, we want to give you something to do. So for the Ecoboard Project, it was, get a more sustainable surfboard from your favorite shaper, right? In the case of the SeaTrees program, it was really about, okay, how do we give people the opportunity to help us replant, to reforest the ocean, right? So every single project that we have up on the website, there's a way for individuals, for brands, for organizations to directly support that project. And that's what we've really broken this down to. Literally, it's the reason why SeaTrees actually had to be a completely different website from Sustainable Surf, because it was really built on this e-commerce model, right? And no one had ever really done that before, so that we could use all of the capabilities that a for-profit brand would have in terms of communicating and engaging and marketing and all the ties with the social media channels and whatever else. And at the end of the day, it wasn't just about saying, here's the work that we're doing and here's why you should support it and come to our gala, or maybe try to make a donation on this link. We took every single project and made it its own product page as well, right? So you can go to the SeaTrees website right now, and I encourage everyone to do so, and you can plant 10 mangrove trees in about 60 seconds. Like, it's that quick. It's that easy. You can do it from your phone. We have plant to text modules. We have all these really simple, quick, easy ways for people to say, yes, I'm stoked about this. I'm engaged. I want to be a part of this, solution. And you can plant mangrove trees. You can restore coral reefs. You can do kelp forest, all of these different ways to get involved. And you can do a deep dive into every single project that we actually have there. And you'll see the photos, the videos, the impact that's actually being created. We have everything tracked to the UN SDGs, if you want to look at things that way, right? And so it is an educational side of things where people can dig into the actual projects, the actual ecosystems that are, again, doing that hard work of reversing climate change. So we're trying to bring it like it's super tangible, it's super direct, and we can bring people along with us. So when you spend $10 in the SeaTrees program, you know exactly what you're getting, across what ecosystem you're actually spending it in. And to me, that's where I think all nonprofits, regardless of the problem you're trying to solve and how you deliver it to your own, constituents or community, you have to be thinking about how you actually do that and how to make it easy, how to make it actionable, right? Everyone's tired of being told how bad it is, and they're looking for ways to actually say, okay, well, how can I make a positive difference, right? And our website is one way. The events that we still do are another way. The brand collaborations that we do with, like the guys at Virgin Beer down in San Diego, they brewed us a kelp beer, right?
So cool.
And, we go and we have an event at, their brewery, and it's out there and we're educating people and you can drink beer. Same thing with our, friends at Head High Wines or 12 Tide Kelp Chips or, whatever else, right? It's like, it's how do you bring this to people? And I know that you probably want to go here because this is where that connection with running towards brand and brand partners that actually have authentically understood their role in needing to help shift and provide solutions for people to actually take part in, right? So
yeah, and I would imagine, is this the certification program you have for brands to get involved and to help tackle their footprint and do some offsetting through their program?
yeah.
I mean, this kind of comes full circle. This kind of comes full circle for you guys as to what you were doing prior to Sustainable Surf, what you're doing now. Yeah, let's kind of wrap it up and talk about kind of this marquee program. How do brands get involved? What role do they play?
Yeah.
And then from you, I kind of want to get a sense too of from here on out, like what are the challenges they're still facing? So tell us the role that you think brands play and how they can get involved with this.
So brand partners have been so key and important for us across all of our programs, really, but in particular with the SeaTrees program, because they provide funding for us to do the direct restoration work that we do in country, in developing countries around the world, in partnership with the local nonprofits that we partner with and the communities who are, in most cases, doing the actual work. We need those funds is what it really comes down to, right?
Yeah.
And then secondarily, it's the access to their audience. And this is, and I'm right up front with all of our brand partners whenever we have sort of those first calls. And I say, listen, it's my goal to actually do something so cool with you that becomes your marketing message. That becomes the best thing you've ever had to talk about, to connect to your community and your stakeholders. This is what I'm actually after. I want our story to be so compelling that it becomes our story, right? And we found that to be incredibly effective, right? Most of the partners that we have for the SeaTrees program are not in the surfing industry, right? And that's great. It means that we're doing what we thought we could do from the very beginning, right? Which is to take surfing and ocean culture and to wrap our own message around this, which is we need to actually reverse climate change by protecting and restoring these ocean ecosystems. Other people outside of surfing are really interested in that overall message, right? So, we have a partnership with Salesforce, with WeTransfer. We have a new partnership with the Bentley Motor Foundation, right?
Very nice.
And it's basically across every single industry and vertical, as well as within the surf industry with the Board Riders group, right? So, different surf brands and whatever else that have been doing things, we've been trying to help them have a really consistent message around, cool, it's about, these ecosystems where everyone wants to surf. We need to focus in on those, right? And without leaning in towards brand partners, which have the access to reach people through their own marketing and communications, we would not have the reach that we have right now and the capacity to keep growing the amount of projects that we keep adding to our portfolio, which is considerable. So in the last 3 years, we've actually been able to support over 20 different projects around the world across 6 different ecosystems.
Wow.
And the overall goal for us to reach by 2030, right? And this is really in line with what global scientists have been telling us for the last 10 years, which is like, okay, guys, by 2030, that's a tipping point that if we have not started to reduce and be really well on our way to having ways to pull carbon out of the atmosphere and the ocean, then in terms of the climate crisis, we're going to end up over a tipping point that it's going to be incredibly hard to actually come back from, right? So our goal by 2020 is to have over 100 blue carbon projects, supported, started, launched across our overall platform. And the brand partners and individuals together are the way that we're actually going to get there.
I love it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a big undertaking, and you're right. It's more urgent than ever. We're running out of time. And like you said, 2030 is what we got, 7 years away.
7 years away, man.
Yeah. And I mean, we've been warned, irreversible, catastrophic, repercussions. So
Yes, we've been warned, but it really does come down to everyone can see what's happening right now. It's plain as day. I remember sitting in this very apartment, having all the doors shut, couldn't really breathe. It was probably 98 degrees inside of here, but the smoke from the wildfires that hit California that year were so bad, we couldn't go outside. We couldn't even breathe in here. And there was nowhere to go, Derek, right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like, oh, great, let's, leave. It was like, 3 hours that way, it was even worse. 3 hours that way, it was even worse. And sitting here, that was one of those key moments of like, yeah, we're basically like a form of climate refugee right now. And we have everything that we could possibly want or need. Imagine the communities in the developing world that have so much less and are dealing with a version of that exact same thing, thinking, I'm basically trapped here. There's nowhere to go. And I don't have the tools to basically fix this, right? So for me, it really is about that intense urgency, right? And at the same time, it's hard to live life with that much stress on yourself and that, sense of urgency just, sort of weighting down on you. And I feel like I'm lucky. Again, this is something that I learned kind of from surfing, right? It's like I learned early on to be kind of a happy warrior, right? Or to be calm, to sit in that moment. I remember the first trip I took to Hawaii and paddling out double, maybe triple overhead, sets that came in and would essentially wipe everyone out, and paddling next to my good buddy Chris, and we started hysterically laughing as a gigantic set was coming. And we were like, all right, we'll see you on the other side, jump off your board, you like dive down, and if you're super freaked out and stressed and whatever else, it's not going to, come out very good for you. If you have those lessons that we talked about earlier that surfing and ocean culture give to you, then you can ride through these sets and you can ride sort of through these waves and really see your way to the other side. And when you're underwater getting plummeted, you have this vision. I'm going to pop out and it's going to be blue sky and no more sets. And then I'm going to be stoked and turn around and grab the next wave. That's kind of how I feel about being able to do this type of work. I wake up every day, and I know everyone on our team, and Kevin wakes up every single day, proud and honored and feeling lucky to be able to do this type of work in this moment, because we don't feel like there's anything more important than we could possibly be doing.
Well, you guys are, it's a great way to kind of start to close the book here. I mean, you guys are doing some really great, important work, and I applaud you and congratulate you on the progress that you've made, and just for the effort, and, with gratitude of just the effort that you guys are putting in here to spreading this message and doing this hard work. Kind of my last question, I think, here then is this show is about understanding, and what I do too is really about trying to promote this idea of understanding and getting to the heart of what really is going on. I think you've laid out a whole bunch of good examples of why you're doing this, but is there anything though that you really want to drive home for brands or individuals in terms of understanding the work that you do, the situation that we're in? I don't know if we had to kind of wrap this up. Is there some sort of message of understanding that you want people to know, maybe that they don't think about when it comes to the work that you guys do?
Yes. And it kind of, ties into what you were just so graciously saying, right? Which is like, kudos to you guys and great work and whatever else. I actually don't want to hear that because when it comes down to it, the real impact or the measure of success that we actually go by is not, hey, look at us, we're making this big change and whatever else. I need you to join. We need your energy. We need your, interest. We need your, frankly, commitment to like understanding and being on that same path, right? So it's that idea of like, hey, Michael and Kevin and the small team that we have, or pick Surfrider, pick Save the Waves, pick Surfers Against Sewage in the UK. It's like all of our groups that are doing these things, right? Don't look at us and say, good job and you made this impact and whatever else. If we're doing our jobs correctly, we've created a space for you to see yourself in and understand that you can actually make a real change and that there's a place for you to be and that you're needed here, right? Like that's what I want people to understand about the work that we actually do, is that it is not about us. It is about how can we get everyone else in the world to understand what we do about the climate and the role that the ocean has, and the impacts that are happening in the ocean, how we can actually reverse those, and how do we help get you started, right? And how do we, very selfishly, how do I get, the roughly 10 million surfers around the world to plant one sea tree every single year, right? Look at the impact that would actually make across all these different ecosystems. Yeah. Now imagine if they planted, 5 or 10, right? We're talking low lifts, right? But we're talking incredible impact. And that's what I want people to really take away, is to say like, cool, don't congratulate me, join me.
I love that.
Or join some other group that's closer to you, or there's at your, that speaks to your passion. It's like, we need people to get up off the couch, get up off whatever, and see themselves as part of the solution to making this, again, a livable planet. I don't think that's too hard of a goal to reach for, especially like you and I have. We do have kids. We have a next generation. We have our groms that we want to be able to, enjoy the ocean in the same way that we have. I want that for all the parents and all the kids and all the groms out there, right? That's how we get to it.
Yeah, and that's the definition of sustainability, is meeting the needs of the present without sacrificing the ability of future generations to meet their own needs as well. So I love that call to action, and that's really important. Michael, I'm going to plant my SeaTrees today before the end of the day, and I'm going to put the link here for everybody as well too. As you said, take an active role, be a part of it, and don't just be a passenger or a standard buyer. It's like, get into the race, right?
Yeah.
Get involved, be a part of it. Hey, thank you so much for your time today, for all your advice, all the great things, just the great stories as well. I think we could probably have a part 2 here. I want to do some follow-up to find out, how many trees have you planted? What's going on now? So, and I think we're going to get Kevin on the show as well to just hear more about the work that you guys are doing. But
yeah, exactly. Michael, hey, and I'll leave you with this. World Mangrove Day is actually coming up July 26th, right? So just a few days, and we are at 3 million sea trees planted and protected in just since we started the SeaTrees program. So it's basically 3 years, right? And we feel like we're just essentially getting started. It's a big milestone, but we want to see 30 million, right, by 2030.
So I was going to say congratulations, but I won't. I'm just going to go add to that number to help you get to that next number for you guys.
Sweet.
So,
hey man, if everyone takes that same action, we'll get there. Derek,
thanks. Thank you, Michael. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for being here on the show. You guys keep doing the good work that you guys are doing, and I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. See you, bud.
All right, buddy. Hey, thanks for listening. This is a show produced by the Underswell and our School of Understanding. If you're interested in being a part of this movement and want to dive deeper into the art of understanding sustainability better so that you can do things better, be sure to visit us at theunderswell.com. We offer structured, easy-to-follow workshops, courses, and member resources to make sustainability a part of your career or lifestyle. Because remember, no matter what role you play a role, and we're here for you. Thanks again.